First of all, Turkey is definitely seen as a rising and a very important power in the African continent. It's investing much more heavily than most European countries, both in development as well as in trade and commerce, but also in culture, education, and other important sectors. So certainly Turkey's influence in the African continent is rapidly rising over the past 2 decades under the leadership of President Erdoğan. There's no question about that. And of course, President Erdoğan as a leader himself is quite influential in the African continent, certainly in Somalia for sure. I mean, I think he is probably more popular in Somalia than in Turkey, but also you can say that about Erdoğan in other countries as well, where he's seen as a leader who stands up for the rest of the world. Remember, the world is not about the 5 powers that President Erdoğan talks a lot about. So I think that's an important dimension. Another important dimension is the increasing security cooperation between Turkey and the African continent. For example, in Somalia now, we have the largest security cooperation with any country in the world. Turkey is our largest security partner. It trains about 1/3 of the entire security forces of Somalia, and it has the only Turkish military base in Africa is actually based here in Somalia. Turkey has probably its largest embassy in Africa here in Somalia, but also in other countries, it's doing the same thing. Recent conflicts, in Africa, especially in Ethiopia and other places, Turkey was quite prominent. Its provision of military hardware, such as the very famous Bayraktar drones to the Ethiopian government, but also to other governments, has been quite important and effective. And so I would say overall, the Turkish influence is increasing a lot. Also in cultural terms, I mean, Turkish dramas are being watched by millions of African people on a daily basis, even though they don't understand Turkish language. But I think a lot of them are just understanding it and learning from those. So the influence is gaining quite a bit of momentum. The other thing to consider is that seen as the colonial power, whereas France and UK and Italy and Germany and others are perceived as colonial powers, and therefore some repercussion from the colonial times still prevail in the African continent. But Turkey is not colonial power, and therefore it maintains a much better credibility among the African people as a rising power that is among the top 20 economies in the world, but that's also an important cultural and political hub, a country that's also straddling between Europe and the Middle East as well. So I think those are important factors that are contributing to the relationship between Turkey and Africa, but also on the personality of President Erdoğan, who has been able to open more embassies in the African continent, travel to Africa a lot more than any other Turkish leader in the history of Turkey probably, but also has forged a very close relationship with a lot of African country leaders, including here in Somalia, but also in other countries as well.